I'm here to provide the counterpoint about why you should all submit to Islam. Just kidding. I'm here to talk about the Woke-Islamist Alliance on university campuses, which makes sense because I'm 23 and recently out of college. This is fresh on my mind. Isn't that right, Peyton? Woke cultural Marxists are seeking to destroy the American identity and any institution, tradition, or norm that serves to uphold it. Wokeism is anti-Christianity, authoritarian, and against our entire constitutional order. Islamists are seeking to destroy the American identity and any institution, tradition, or norm that serves to uphold it. Islam, not just radical Islam, is anti-Christianity, authoritarian, and against our entire constitutional order. The woke see Islam as an oppressed class in their oppressor versus oppressed worldview that it must coddle and advocate for. Islamists see the woke as a group of functionally retarded allies that it must also eventually conquer, but will use it to their benefit for now. Thank you for plowing that ground, Ryan. What does this really mean? We have two distinct groups. One is a relatively new culture amongst the left. The other is a culture that has been around for centuries, both seeking to supplant the founding culture of this nation. What is a nation? A nation is a body of people united by a common descent, history, culture, or language inhabiting a particular country or territory. A nation is not a country or a government, it is a people. Combined, we comprise a Christian nation, a Christian culture, and a Christian people. The Woke-Islamist Alliance seeks to create a new nation within the borders of the United States, one completely untethered to constitutional principles or Western civilization. The former being dumb enough to think Islamists will thank them on the back end, and the latter being shrewd enough to use their bumbling allies until they no longer need them. And crucial to the understanding the seriousness of this problem, multiple nations cannot inhabit the same territory without friction. The woke want to change our nation while Islam wants to conquer it. Some on our side make a similar mistake to the woke and will insist that we should see Islam and Muslims as political allies. As some might say, Muslim voters oppose transgender propaganda in schools, boys and girls bathrooms, and sex change surgeries for minors. Their own perceptions of Israel may even fuel this mistake. They see it as a reason to potentially court support of Islam. Whatever the excuse, these ideologies are not our friend. And to the degree that it is happening, we should stop pretending otherwise. What better place for woke left to start this process than in the education system? Everyone here is well aware of the decades-long march of the woke left to transform K-12 public education into anti-American indoctrination pipelines. However, it is at the college level that this effort can really radicalize, finally out of the view of the prying eyes of meddlesome parents. Even here, though, it is not that we are unaware, rather until relatively recently, too many have been afraid of being canceled if they were to speak up about it. Nowhere has the Woke-Islamist Alliance been more evident than on college campuses. Universities have welcomed with open arms Islamist professors, Islamist students, and Islamist organizations. Of course, the popular refrain is that these are moderates, not jihadists. But a moderate form of Islam is still a highly radicalized ideology. Although we can empirically determine this through observation, there's also substantial data on this from the Pew Research Center. And some of this is dated. I think it's actually worse than what I'm about to tell you. Among the key findings, 89% of Palestinians want Sharia law, Islamic law, to be the official law of their land. 75% of Palestinians support Islamic courts having authority over civil and family law separate from the existing legal system. 44% of Palestinians believe the Sharia law should be applied to all citizens, including non-Muslims. 40% of Palestinians believe suicide bombings are at least sometimes justified for defending Islam. This is the highest percentage of Muslims in all countries and territories surveyed. With regard to specific provisions of Sharia law, 46% of Palestinians support honor killings. 81% of Palestinians favor stoning to death as a punishment for adultery. 66% of Sharia-supportive Palestinians believe death is appropriate punishment for leaving Islam. 48% of Palestinians believe polygamy is acceptable. Now, this data has a common theme. This is amongst the highest percentage of radicalization, but amongst all of these 50-plus Muslim countries, the data is quite similar. The moderate version of Islam from an American conception just simply does not exist in the wild. That doesn't mean there aren't moderate Muslims from our conception, but it's not a significant constituency, certainly not within the United States. American universities are bringing in multitudes of moderate Islamists into their systems. Do American universities ask any of the questions on university admission forms regarding the beliefs we just outlined? No. Did Biden's State Department or DHS ask these questions in 2021 when they allowed thousands of Islamists into our country? No. And some of you might be shocked. You'd think it's a 14-step, 15-step process to be able to come to this country and get approval. They don't ask these simple questions. They don't ask literally, do you believe that someone should be killed if they leave the religion of Islam? That's not a disqualifying, it's not even asked. And we're not even really vetting these people. As long as they're not card-carrying members of Hamas or the Taliban, then they're basically okay to come in and they get approved. It's a ridiculous system. It needs to be reformed. So what has been the result? Islamist organizations have sprung up and are now fomenting extremist, anti-Semitic, and anti-Christian encampments and protests at colleges and universities in support of terror organizations like Hamas. For example, National Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP, which was founded by American Muslims for Palestine, AMP, is one group claiming to support over 200 Palestinian solidarity organizations on college campuses across the occupied U.S. and Canada. That last part was a quotation from them. It has released statements, some purportedly signed by various campus chapter organizations, expressing support for a coordinated pressure campaign against university administrations and trustees to divest from the Israeli state immediately. And again, regardless of what one thinks of Israel, these decisions are not being made through the prism of America First worldviews, but rather through the prism of radical Islam and woke universities seeking to provide these radicals with a platform. Also, in a value statement on their website, SJP states, quote, "The struggle for a free Palestine is interconnected with the struggle for black liberation, for gender-based and sexual freedom, and for a livable and sustainable planet. All pursuits for freedom, justice, and equality are materially intertwined and will require us to struggle against state violence, colonialism, capitalism, and imperialism in all their forms," end quote. Groups like AMP and SJP repurpose Hamas's narrative by framing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as a struggle against colonialism and oppression. In attempts to obfuscate their support for Hamas, they instead often talk about things like resistance and liberation. Recently, at the so-called People's Conference for Palestine, a speaker stated, quote, "We have to destroy the idea of America in our heads, in our neighbors' heads, in our comrades' heads," end quote. This conference just occurred. There's a lot of clips on it online, and we could have an entire panel just discussing the absolute idiotic and anti-American violent rhetoric that came out of it. After the Hamas attacks on October 7th, 2023, SJP organized a National Day of Resistance and circulated a resistance toolkit to frame the attacks as part of the justified Palestinian struggle. This narrative encouraged campus demonstrations and amplified anti-Israel sentiment, further pushing the agenda consistent with Hamas's underlying goals. And let us be abundantly clear. I've been on 3 combat deployments, so I'm intimately aware of the rules of war and the ethics of war. Murdering babies, children, women, and the elderly at point-blank range, as the Muslim attackers on October 7th did, is not justified military resistance. Campus organizations, nevertheless, have spent 2 years dancing around this topic and making every excuse possible for it or overtly supporting it. This is not about Gaza and Israel. This is about using Palestinians as the cause to advance the Islamist agendas of Afghanistan, Yemen, Iran, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Pakistan, etc. within the United States. Funding these kinds of organizations has been linked to foreign terrorist organizations. For example, AMP is connected to the Holy Land Foundation, which sent approximately $12.4 million outside the U.S. to support Hamas. Also, according to George Washington University, Iran has leveraged front organizations in the U.S. to funnel money and provide ideological support to anti-Israel protests on college campuses. Islamists use this excuse to establish beachheads of Islamist networks in the United States. Now, due to the malignant force of Islamist organizations and their foreign terrorist funders, many faculty members at American colleges and universities have fallen under the spell of Islamism. For example, Harvard's most senior administrators discussed whether to denounce Hamas's terrorism in a draft statement and decided not to do so. A small group of these administrators collaborated to draft a statement, and the draft history of Harvard's October 9th statement reveals that early drafts contained language explicitly condemning Hamas, which the group of Harvard administrators ultimately rejected. Also, according to the House Committee on Education and Workforce, One of Columbia University's potential responses to student protests was to develop a joint program with Al-Quds University in the West Bank, which has an active Hamas-affiliated student organization and has been site of numerous Hamas rallies, and stated after October 7, 2023, quote, "mourning the martyrs of the nation who died yesterday in the West Bank and Gaza as a result of this aggression," end quote. Columbia and Harvard are just two minor examples of a pervasive problem on college campuses. Faculty and students continue to find ways to support Islamist initiatives. Students serve as the nucleus of the Islamist threat to our nation. As I stated earlier, many Islamist groups repurpose Islam's narrative for global movements by framing the conflicts through woke lenses as a struggle against colonialism and oppression. This has convinced many young and impressionable students to become ardent advocates for Islamist groups. For example, according to the group Jewish Voice of Peace, a pro-Palestinian organization. By the way, can there be anything more idiotic than a Jewish organization carrying water for Hamas? In April and May of 2024, students pitched tents on their university lawns, reclaiming the space as liberated zones and popular universities for Gaza. Inside these encampments, students led seminars about Palestinian histories and the evils of colonialism. At a protest at Columbia University, chants of intifada, intifada, long live the intifada were heard. The word intifada is an Arabic term that generally translates to uprising. This is not an out-of-context usage of the term that merely seeks to convey a need for vocal activism on the issue. It is an overt call for physical violence. There were also reports of students at Columbia University putting up stickers saying "Death to America" and handing out pamphlets from official Hamas media groups. We are a Christian nation. There are more than 50 countries with a Muslim majority. Muslims, like people of any faith, have their own nations where their culture, laws, and traditions are rooted, often shaped by centuries of history and governance. The United States has no interest in inhabiting or dominating their lands, assuming those countries are not seeking to harm us. We are not obligated to open our doors to people, including students, who want to partner with the woke left to destroy our constitutional order and replace it with something foreign and at war with our culture. We have the moral and ethical foundation to strive for the preservation of our nation's integrity, its borders, culture, and sovereignty. Protecting our nation means safeguarding its unique identity, security, and values from the pressures of Islamism or unchecked mass immigration. There is no right of non-citizens to organize the enemy and foment violence against the United States from within our borders. Any non-citizen participating in these activities should be immediately deported. Furthermore, naturalized citizenship comes with duties, and our system provides statutory methods of denaturalizing a citizen. In cases where naturalized citizens who are woke leftists or Islamist activists on these campuses or elsewhere, and are seeking to harbor or aid the enemy of the United States actively or to express overt support for groups and countries that call for the death of the United States or who themselves call for the fall of the United States, they too should be denaturalized and actually deported immediately. We should seek to broaden the statutory power to strip them of citizenship and then that they fraudulently attained, and then deport them. And in conclusion, this is our nation, this is our culture. We have a right to defend it, and we should stop being afraid of saying so. Thank you.